The end product is, the way I set it up is at the top left corner, I've got my grid data, and then I've got my warped surface data. So the grid data, when I click on jump, brings me down to this string, which was my subdivided grid, and then we go in and we have the move, and that's what you see here, the flat one. I can jump back and then jump to warped surface, which brings me a little bit further down, or I could just scroll down. But sometimes it's not that easy once you get into something really crazy. But so I jump down to my warp surface string of data, and that is right here. And that brings me to perspective right there. Okay? So now that we've cleaned it up a little bit, these are our two data strings right here. You can see where they're all tied. When I select them all, you can go and see like how they're connected and everything. Right now we have nothing on the output end. So that's what we're going to start working on. I left off the last video for this trying to find the surface normals so that we can offset the lines to the inside face. So let's get back to doing that. So if you recall, I'm going to ungroup this because it's not a complete group. Usually what I do is I leave the string of data open like this until it's done, and I know that it's a complete thought. And then I lock it into a group and I move on to the next segment.
How do you know when it's a complete thought?
It depends. Like right now, this first one is sort of a complete thought, but I know that I want to connect these and have my triangulation members and pipe it. Once I get to the point of piping it, I think that'll be my complete thought.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so here we've got our grid points, and let me pull up my sample here, which I lost. And with this grid of points, we're essentially going to create a relationship. Nope. Oh, that is it. We're going to create a relationship from the centroids at the bottom to the grid at the top. Let me open it up in perspective too so you can see how we're working on it. And I'll hide this. Don't need to see the original surface. Don't need to see the original grid cells. And it looks like I gotta go back to the beginning and turn grid cell, no. What surface am I seeing? This one. I have another surface in there somewhere that I don't want to see. Ah, that one. Alright, turn that off. So I've got points. I've got points in my grid, and then I've got centroids that I moved down, which don't look like centroids anymore. Oh, I turned the centroids off, I think. No, I didn't. Oh, I'm just showing the centroids. Thank you very much. I am just showing the centroids.
That was a question.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So I am just showing the centroids. But I'll drop in really quickly under curves. I'll drop in an edge so that we can see our original frame above versus the centroids below. This just makes it visible. Okay, so I may or may not actually use that for anything, but I dropped it in there so I can visually see without having to see my faces and my vertices. Okay, just a tip. So I need to connect them with a line, but let's look at our data type. Okay, so our geometry that's coming out right now is, where's the package of data? Points, vertices. All right, so our vertices at the plane above, our vertices are coming out as groups of 4. That is good. We want that. And we want that because we are going to connect our centroid to all 4 points at once. So to do that, we're going to grab a curve under primitive and create a line. Oops. All right, so far I haven't done anything but drop in the curve primitive. Okay, so the curve primitive asks for point A and point B. It's very, very simple. The good thing about it is that it will process packaged data. So if I put in 1 centroid and 8,000 points, it will draw a line from that 1 centroid to 8,000 points. It'll draw 8,000 lines. So our centroid here, we'll drop it on A. And then the vertices, which is our package of data, drop it on B. Oh, I think I need it. What did I do? Oh, I drew it from the wrong vertices. That's vertices to vector. All right, so we're at least going vertical here now. And what am I doing incorrect here? Gets the G and the A. So we do not want this flattened. There we go. So we do not want our faces flattened in this definition. Because our faces, we're reading the centroids as groups of centroids as well. So we had to flatten it out so that every face had its own singular centroid that it moved down and attached to all those points. Okay, so this is what we're looking at. I'm going to kind of finagle some of these things together here so that we can visually see the relationship. So we're sort of creating this little sine wave here to get to our lines. And here, you know, when you float around, you can really already see that primarily we're almost complete. That created all of our triangulated edges. And now we have a process of establishing our bottom chords. Yes?
So when you put in line, it just automatically knew to put the lines from the centroid into the corners of the square?
Yes. Do you know why?
No.
Okay. Well, let's look at why. So let's go into display and go to point list. And we're going to look at these packets of data. Okay, so under vertices, let's plug that into the points.
Okay.
The vertices from that deconstruct. You can change the size to make it a little bit more clear. But let's find one that I can actually see reasonably well. This magenta one I can see. So very similar to our grid assignment that we were doing the other day, when we have our vertices unflattened, every single cell has 4 points. And so when you plug it into the line, it will read all 4 points as a packet of data. So I plugged my vertices into A, so there are packets of 4 points that get plugged in. Then when I plugged in my singular centroid, right, see that n equals 0? That means it's a group with only 1 in it. And it will communicate to the group of 4. And it'll draw 4 lines. So every single one of these at the output now has 4 lines.
Okay.
N equals 4. You guys got that?
Yeah.
Preview. Okay. So we have our lines. We have our edges at the top. So we've got most of our frame. But we need to create a frame down the bottom. And I actually kind of went back and forth with myself on this one, trying to create the bottom chords. And when I say bottom chords, what I'm referring to is these, right? It's the way a truss works. The top members will go, in this case, they'll go into tension. No, the bottom chords go into tension, and we've got compression in the vertical members, some of them. Well, they're all going to be in. It depends. Anyway, I probably failed my structures exam the other day. Anyway, so we've got a bottom chord now that we need to adjust. But if you look at it really closely, they're square, right? So the top cell is square. The bottom cell is square. Yes?
So if we were to do the same exact thing to the warp surface, would it be kind of like the other one that looked like kind of like a roller coaster?
Yep. And that's why we're doing them both at once.
Okay.
So we are going to be able to adapt this to a warped surface. However, we need to use surface normals instead of just move the centroid down. Okay, so to create that frame, I kind of went back and forth with myself about whether or not I wanted to use lines and reconstruct the lines with all the data points. However, you know, I've got these packets of 4, but if I create a line around each one, it's going to create duplicates. So what I decided to do was to actually create a surface, and you can do this a number of ways. This isn't the only way. You can create a surface using surface frames. Or I'm sorry. Yeah, surface frames, I think, is what I was looking for. No. I think I used surface from points. Yeah. Did I? Yeah, I did use surface points. So I use surface points, and I plug the, well, let's take a look at the input. It obviously wants a group of points to create a surface off of, minimum of 3. And then it will ask you for the number of points in the U direction. So this part is, well, we'll talk about that in a second. So we'll plug that in, and it gives us an error. So it says, oh, line to point. That's right, I need the centroid. So I go back to the centroid here, and I'll put that in, and it's still going to give me an error on those points because they need to be flattened. So it's not collecting data, well, the U parameter isn't, but this needs to be flattened on the input. Okay, so normally what we've been doing, like over here, we flatten the output, but when we go into this point value, because we're not working in packets of data, we just want it to read all of those points and give us a surface at the extents of that entire point cloud. Okay, so we flatten that so it reads all those points. The other thing we need to do is get a U count. And the U count is going to be exactly the same, I believe, as the original U count. So that would be the X, if I recall correctly. I could be wrong. No. Why is that too high? Oh, because those aren't the moved centroids. That's why. I plugged in the wrong grid of points. There we go. Ha! I'll put that here. So what we have here is we've got our top frame and our legs, and then we've got a surface for our bottom frame. Yes?
What's the U connected to on the surface?
The U is connected to, where did I plug it in? That one, the X value.
Okay.
So we've got all these different components in our surface. Okay, this surface then needs to just very simply be subdivided, and then it also needs to be deconstructed to its edges or curves, and then we can use that as our line work. So the difference here, though, is that now at the bottom level we only have 3 frames per side instead of 4. So we're going to use a very simple math operator to just change the values that we need. So we'll go back to, and we're going to kind of duplicate some data here that we used before. We're doing a subdivide domain. We're going to do a surface isotrim. Surface is there. Our domain is there. And our isotrim is going to be a mathematical differential to what the grid is. Okay, so the grid was 4, and so we're just going to do 4 minus 1. So under math, we'll go to we'll go to param. I'm probably moving a little too quick for you guys, huh?
Yeah, pause it first.
Sorry. I get on a tangent sometimes. So let's get to the point then.
Surface grid divide. What's divide under?
Yeah, let's get to the point where you've got a surface down there, and if you get to the subdivide surface, that's great. Whoops.
Oh no. Your video is like 14 minutes, man.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to stop it here. But this is where I want you to get, okay? So I want you to get to the point where you've got your grid or your surface at the bottom. Okay, so you'll connect the legs with line, and then you'll get your grid or your surface grid or network surface or whatever it's called. There it is. Surface from points at the bottom. Okay? This is under freeform. and I'll clean this up for you too.